Hi everyone, I'm the plant propagator and welcome to my channel. Today I'm in the laboratory here in Southwest Florida and it's already been a busy morning. I made 3 liters of media that is currently in the autoclave for flasking. I've got a lot of seedlings to transfer. Not too many seeds to plate today, and then I'm having a small group coming in for a deflasking. What I want to do today, though, is get very basic and talk about a little bit of history, and that is flasking history. I had somebody commented and asked me what is flasking, and I want to give kind of an overview of a little bit of the history behind that and what's involved with that. So very basic information that I would like to share with you today. And I'm going to try to make it interesting for everyone, and especially the people that are already familiar with flasking, just so you can understand a little bit of the history behind it. So, you know, orchid seeds are tiny, they're dust-like, and when they're dispersed in nature, they have to be fortunate enough to land in the proper place to get germination. Orchid capsules produce large numbers of seed, and the reason for that is there's very low seed and seedling survival. Again, the seed has to land in just the right place, and what is in the right place? What's there? Well, in nature, what happens is the seed has to land in a place where there are certain beneficial organisms, and the main beneficial organism that we talk about in the orchid area is Mycorrhizae. And Mycorrhizae establish a relationship with the orchid seed and seedlings and even plants. And what happens is, because the orchid seeds are so small, they don't have any food reserves. And the Mycorrhizae associates with the seed, and it breaks down some of the components on the bark or in the soil or in the surface material, whatever surface material the orchid seed is on, and then it essentially feeds the orchid embryo within the seed. So in nature, you have to have the beneficial microbes around, and there are bacteria, there are other fungi, but the main organism that people talk about is Mycorrhizae. This is a very old story, by the way. So the first report and the discovery of the mycorrhizal relationship with orchid seeds came out, I think, in the very early 1900s. So, and you can take advantage of this if you don't have flasking facilities, and you have a seed capsule. You can sprinkle the seeds from the seed capsule in an area where the other orchids are growing, and hopefully there's Mycorrhizae present so that they can establish a relationship with these seeds, and then you can get seed germination. All right, so this is a very, very old story. Now, over the years, there's been efforts to purify certain Mycorrhizae, and there's certain Mycorrhizae that are associated with seeds, and there's different ones that associate with seedlings and mature plants, and there's other organisms that associate with them as well. And again, these are beneficial microbes. We don't want to talk about the pathogenic microbes. We don't want to go there. Anyway, so in nature, you have this relationship, and you can take advantage of that. And there are different mycorrhizal organisms that will associate with different types of orchids, depending on where you're located, whether they're terrestrial or epiphytic, and there's a number of different organisms that are out there. What I'm waiting for, and one of the discussions on comments on my channel was, is there a mycorrhizal inoculum that you can use if you want to get orchids growing on using a non-flasking approach? If you want to get orchids growing, you know, on your bark or on whatever. And I don't know if any of there are commercial mycorrhizal preps that are available, but none that are specific for orchids. And this would probably be a mix of different organisms. Now, I have some colleagues that work in this area, that work in the area of beneficial microbes, and I can ask them if they've heard of anything and if they would consider putting a package together that would contain the various beneficial mycorrhizae for orchids. All right, let's move. I'm getting sidetracked a little bit. Soon after the mycorrhizal relationship with orchids was discovered, people tried to figure out how to get the orchid's seeds to germinate without the mycorrhizae. And at that time, the process of tissue culture was just beginning. So about 25 years after the discovery of mycorrhizal associations with orchid seeds, there was an effort to try to grow orchid seeds in the absence of mycorrhizae. And what happened is in the early 1920s, there was a scientist, a plant physiologist at Cornell, and I should say a lot of the early work with orchid was in Germany and the UK. And France. But in the 1920s, there was an effort in the U.S. By Knudsen to establish a medium that where orchids could grow without the mycorrhizae. And I looked at the paper that Knudsen published in, I think it published it in 1922, and it was a great paper. This guy, it's interesting, the publications and the effort that goes into the publications, that 100 years ago was just enormous, and what was done was incredible. Good information in there, really amazing. The amount of different media addenda that he tried was really impressive. Anyway, so what he did is he tried a defined media. And in order to get orchid seeds to germinate, and then he evaluated all these media addenda on the efficiency of orchid seed germination of a few different types of orchid seed. And again, this was not an orchid growing area. This was Cornell in New York. Anyway, and I think a lot of the orchids came from, the orchid seeds at least, came from Florida in that study. So what he found is that he could use a chemically defined media, but there was also other media addenda. So he tried various, amino acid supplements. There was casein hydrolysate. So casein is a milk protein, so that is digested. There was peptone was tried, which can be like a meat, digested meat, or that consists of various amino acids and vitamins, and so there's some undefined components in there. But so these are media addenda, and it's interesting because those media addenda still work. Anyway, he did all this work in these large glass tubes, and he showed that in the paper. Okay, so where did the term flasking come from? Well, back in those days, everyone worked with glassware, and the glassware that people worked with was, it worked well. It could be washed and reused, and when this was being done at a larger scale, people used flasks like this, and these are Erlenmeyer flasks. And I should say, Erlenmeyer is the guy's name. He's a German guy that kind of developed these flasks. So the term flasking was derived from the use of these types of containers, these flasks. Now, people don't use these containers anymore. If you're going to use glass, people use, here's a baby food jar. This is glass. Here is another glass. So this is a jam and jelly container. And I got to show this, if you know this. And I'm showing this because the plant propagator Junior works for this company, not in the jam and jelly division anymore, but she works in this company. And then the flasks were further modified. Again, another glass container right here. And this is a mason jar that has a special cap, a special lid on it for breathing. So these again are the types of flasks. Started out in these standard Erlenmeyer flasks here, And then people were using glass flasks, glass test tubes, things like that. Now what people use in the laboratory for flasking are this container or this container or this container. All right. This container, I think you obviously know, this is a petri dish. But what you may not know is and I know because I worked with these for years, and I worked on modifying these for years for some of the work that I was doing. This was named by another German guy, Julius Petri. So when you spell out petri dish, the P on Petri is capitalized because Petri was the name of the guy that developed the petri dish. Anyway, little side story there. What people now use for most flasking purposes is they use these flasks, and these are large deli containers. No one thought of changing it. Maybe we can start a little campaign to change it from flasking to deliing, even though that's a lot harder to say. But these are just deli containers, 16 and 32 ounce deli containers, and these containers I've modified so that they're vented. And you get, I like using these containers because it's really easy to access the contents. I should also say, they're round, as you can tell. There are some square containers that people were using in this area because they fit a little bit better on shelves. Those have not really received a lot of good attention, and I think maybe because the square they're hard to clean because of the corners in the square containers. I'm not sure. And they were reusable, and they were fine, and they worked well. But I like using these containers. These are light containers. It's much easier to transport and ship these larger containers. The orchids get really big. They can get really big, as you can tell. In this container, and it's just I started out, I have these around because I started using these types of containers, and I ended up, now everything is in petri dishes, and these are tall petri dishes. These are 100 by 25 millimeter petri dishes, a little more expensive than the smaller ones, but I like the height for a lot of the seedlings that I'm generating. And again, these are relatively cost efficient, but I really like these because look how tall these orchids can grow in this container, in this flask, even though it's not a flask. Okay, so I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of flasking. I should also say, the medium components here, like I alluded to early, the medium components here, some of them are very similar to what was developed 100 years ago in the 1920s. Again, so to get the timeline, 120 years ago, Mycorrhizal and that relationship was discovered. People are still working on this, but it's an old story. And there may be, again, other microbes in the crop sciences area. There are other bacterial beneficial microbes that people inoculate on seeds for good plant growth in the field, and it may be that some of these are going to be beneficial for orchids and other plants as well. But that's a really old story. The story of the flasking medium is also pretty old. It's 100 years old, and the media continue to improve as we develop the technology. The medium that I'm using and that I'm still in the process of developing has a lot of the same components as some of the first media that were evaluated 100 years ago. But there's some additional things in there too. And what me and everyone else are trying to do is tweak to get small increases to have these plants growing big. The advantage, again, of getting big plants in these containers is that the plants, if they get big in here, this is really a well supported medium, and the plants grow big here. But the benefit of this is that the bigger plants are going to do really well upon deflasking, and you get big plants here, and it also shortens the flowering time, which is beneficial. So again, you can see flowering as early as a year and a half, 2 years after deflasking, if the plants get big like this. And if you can accelerate the time, or accelerate the growth of these plants early on, I think it's beneficial to get flowering and then get more generations in over the time that we have. All right. I think that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you have any suggestions or any comments, or if I made an error any place in the information that I shared with you today, let me know. If you like my video and you want to keep on seeing them, it would help me out if you can click on like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. All right, that's all I have for today. Again, I hope you enjoyed it, and happy propagating.